Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And with this one, I will be covering some tips and tricks to start climbing on the solo queue ladder. I know it can feel really difficult. I know it can feel like you get stuck, and it is completely normal to lose 500 rating in one day and pull your hair out, as I have done for myself, or I'd like to say and believe has happened to my hair. So this is totally normal circumstances, but there's some things that you can do to recover that rating or push past some plateaus and some barriers that you're currently stuck at. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about exactly those points. So it's going to be very useful for you to apply to your own gameplay. The first tip that you need to be paying attention to, you have to be paying attention to, check out my add-on video if you haven't. I'll have it linked at the end for this, but pay attention to if your healer's in crowd control. So right here, you can see that I've cycloned the enemy Holy Paladin, and our opponents have responded by using Blur. And this immediate reaction of Blur means that this target is going to be safe while their healer is crowd controlled and buy time for their healer to then stabilize them. So you really want to be paying attention. Now you can see myself, I'm in a fear. My allies could be targeted down by a lot of damage. Luckily, that crowd control chain wasn't really long, so that I was able to connect my own defensive cooldowns, and that should be the rule of thumb. If your healer isn't crowd controlled, they need to be using their cooldowns. So you can see I'm using tree form, I'm recovering. We do ultimately use Blur here. I do think it's more than a fair trade for the metamorphosis of the Demon Hunter, but generally speaking, if your healer isn't CC'd, it should be the healer using their cooldowns. If the healer is CC'd, it should be you. So here I'm blinded, and you can see that my monk has immediately responded with Fortifying Brew, buying time for me to get out of the crowd control and connect heals. This is like the most fundamental thing that is going to be holding you back in solo queue. If you're like hard stuck 1500, can't climb up past 2k, is paying attention to your healer if they're in crowd control and responding immediately with a defensive cooldown. You would preferably like to use your defensive cooldowns that are going to be more readily available, so like 1 minute cooldowns during this time. But you got to measure the burst damage of the other classes and the other team of whether or not you need to go all in on your defense. And then after your healer's out of crowd control, it's kind of going to then become their responsibility. Now, the next level or tip here is going to be more so oriented for healers. It's your duty to be trying to avoid as much crowd control as you can and using the tools that are provided to you. So as a Restoration Druid, I have things like Shadow Meld as Night Elf to be able to immune crowd control. Really recommended. I switched to Night Elf and my rating has gone up so much as a result of having Shadow Meld, but also Tranquility in order to immune incoming CC as well as damage. And then on top of that, just by playing far away. So the Paladin is running at me in this position, so I'm going to pre-Cenarian Ward, paying attention to the oncoming attackers. My Demon Hunter has traded out Blur, and we're going to be able to survive this with that pre-Cenarian Ward, using Diffuse when the healer is crowd controlled, and trying to always have at least some answer for when your healer gets crowd control. This is like the critical, most fundamental bread and butter thing you need to be paying attention to and doing that I don't see enough people doing consistently at low rating, but even at high rating, this is something that can happen very frequently. You need to understand certain classes have a lot of burst damage as well. So in this lobby, there's a Windwalker monk, and Windwalker monks focus heavily around their cooldown. So whenever there's a leg sweep, whenever there's a stun, and whenever there's a Serenity, you have to be hyper responsive. It needs to be an immediate reaction, a Trinket Blur, a Trinket Darkness in some cases. Again, you would prefer to use more lower cooldowns like Blur first, and then only Darkness if it's absolutely necessary, or it's a teammate that also needs help because it's going to be able to be used on multiple players. Here, I'm getting Hots up, I'm staying far away. My Demon Hunter has preemptively pressed Blur. This is a very dangerous thing to do. If you hit the leg sweep, great, and you completely immune it and set up deny their go. But now that I know that Demon Hunter doesn't have Blur, I'm going to get Cenarian Ward up. I'm going to get my biggest Hots on him because I know that Windwalker wants him. And you can see right here, he's immediately trinketed the leg sweep, used Metamorphosis, and with full Hots and Iron Bark and crowd control on the Windwalker, nothing happens, right? It looks like, wow, did the team, why was that even a scary moment? Why is he talking? Nothing happened. And it's because my team in this moment played perfectly. They crowd controlled the monk on his cooldowns, they trinketed and responded and ran away, and I was able to preemptively heal up the target with powerful heal over time effects because I knew they'd be a vulnerable target, and that situation was completely diffused. We were able to crush the Paladin in seconds. Sorry, Paladin. I know it's rough right now as a Holy Paladin. And be able to win the round. So this is why it's so important to be paying attention to enemy cooldowns, your healer in crowd control, the stuns. That's like the main thing, is anybody stunned, and get ready to make a trade immediately. I think personal defensives are a great way to respond initially. Save your healers cooldowns for when they can use them and they're not crowd controlled, and you're going to start seeing a lot more success there. Now, offensively, it can be really tough, as some healers do need to play aggressive. I think as a Resto Druid, it's generally better to be kind of chilling in the back. Here you can see I'm getting attacked. So whenever you're attacked as a healer, you want to try and pull enemies into a bad position. So I was going to pull them into the room and then root both of them if they continued to chase me. But they swapped off me. Overgrowth one target, Cenarian Ward the other target. This way I've got powerful heal over time effects covering my bases. Nature's Swiftness onto the Demon Hunter. And this is going to heal up multiple members while now I'm sitting through crowd control. So here, this is a time where our Demon Hunter could think about using Blur. I'm in a fear, but it looks like we're stable with the Cenarian Ward, and we should be able to survive there. Here we've used Fortifying Brew, and we've used Blur when I'm not CC'd. This could be very dangerous, right? This is what I mean by not using defensive cooldowns at the appropriate time. I was able to freely heal in tree form and be able to recover in this position, so it might be rough. But now I see the Demon Hunter overextended. I'm going to lob out a Bash and toss out some Wraths, try and cyclone him low HP. I end up getting denied on that. I'm going to reposition away. I want to be trying to stay away from the Devastation Evoker, stay away from the Paladin. Hammer of Justice and Sleepwalk are those main crowd controls that I want to be avoiding as a healer in this role. So staying far away gives me time to react with immunities like Shadow Meld and Tranquility. That's why positioning is so important. Here I use pre-Tranquility Shield, anticipating getting crowd controlled as my monk is kind of getting crushed. And here comes a Sleepwalk, so we can Shadow Meld it and try and escape. We end up getting imprisoned. Now, see, we're CC'd. Windwalker responds with Diffuse Magic, and you see, like, he responded pretty fast, but like if he had been lightning fast, he'd be way higher HP at that point. And this is why it's so important to be paying attention to this frame and getting these add-ons that I'm going to have linked at the end of the video, so you can see like, oh, the healer's crowd controlled. I'm alone. I got to do something. Press a big button and try and recover, because otherwise it's just going to be lights out. You need to be really paying hyper vigilant attention to those scenarios in order to survive them. Now the enemies are starting to kind of like dogpile on top of me. Hammer of Justice. So my Demon Hunter uses Blur. Immediate response. I'm stunned. Demon Hunter's low. Enemies using Hunt. Press Blur. And you're going to follow that checklist basically every time healer is CC'd. I'm stunned. Enemies using a button that's really scary. I need to press something immediately. We're going to Bash. We're going to Cyclone up the Evoker, try and take them out of the match, because we're pretty high into dampening at this point, 42%, and our teammates are both dead. So rather than chasing down the Paladin and going for a Bash Cyclone onto the Paladin, which would be easier for my Demon Hunter to do as they're already going to be closer, I'm just going to Bash a DPS that doesn't have a trinket, take them out of the fight for a moment, and try my best to recover, and then toss out a little cheeky Moonfire. I do think a lot of healers have these talents that you need to be taking advantage of that generate damage from healing and over time. So as I heal, I get my Moonfire all powered up, and then finding moments when your allies are attacking, getting a little bit extra damage in right when they're going for it. And that can be one of the best ways to carry a game as a healer. Really just stick up to date with your HPS, make sure you're maxing out your healing, make sure that those cooldown trades are happening. That's like the absolute fundamentals. And then the third tip, which is like going to get you a little bit of a cut ahead of other people, is squeezing in damage in between that time. So me lobbing out a Moonfire right there when the Paladin was CC'd, and then executing the target with a massive Moonfire hit was enough for us to close the game and finish it. You really want to add damage at those key moments as a healer. I would generally not say just like spamming out damage, unless of course you're a Disc Priest and your rotation is based around doing that. But here, triple leg sweep, everyone is stunned. I really should lob out a Moonfire, try and root enemies to stop them from supporting their allies, and get aggressive when we have control of the enemy team. You want to all be paying attention to that and working together, and you can be paying attention to that with this add-on Gladius, which I talk about in my add-on video, and that's why these things are so important. We're cycloning Demon Hunters, we're getting ahead of the damage, we're just riding down the Holy Paladin, getting a ton of pressure, and I'm able to get the enemy attackers out of the game, play a key role just from the healer standpoint in this position. Here we're going to Shadow Meld and pre-Trank Shield at incoming crowd control, as we saw the Paladin running me down. Now I'm in a Hammer of Justice, and I'm going to Trinket this Hammer of Justice and Iron Bark the Windwalker. I want to stay aggressive here. We're really far ahead, and we're able to close out the game with just massive pressure onto the Demon Hunter, using roots and stuff to make enemies escape impossible so that your allies can get back on top of them. It's things like this, these moments, that you really want to be squeezing in damage, but do make sure you've got the basics down first. This is like the third part of the formula that's really going to start pushing your rating up. But if you don't have those fundamentals, you're not trading the cooldowns, your rotations for damage and healing aren't maximized, you're not really going to get to step 3 where you're able to squeeze in and start getting these synergy things, but that would be like the next step in the evolution. Anyways, I hope that you've enjoyed these tips and tricks. I hope that they help you in your climb, because of course we always need more skilled and talented players so the ladder is more active. So that's the main purpose of the channel, to get you guys more skilled and more accomplished and feeling great about yourselves and confident in your play. But other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.